Well, hi everyone. We are here live, and I am Tom Herbel with the City of Huntington Beach Public Works Department, and I'm joined here today with Andrew Cherene from the company HDR. Now, we've planned for about a half hour today to engage the community, introduce Andrew, and begin answering the most important questions from all of you in the community related to Ascon. So Andrew will be answering 5 questions which were received from the community through their outreach efforts to the entire community. So how did we get here today? This event has come about from meetings with the community group for the last 2 months, and I wanted to thank all of them for their dedication to our community and their efforts to date and for getting us to this point. And also I want to note, this is our first social media outreach effort event, and myself as an engineer and Andrew as a geologist, let's just say we're not social media professionals, so we'll do our best. I also wanted to let everyone know that this is not interactive to the postings of comments, but we will welcome comments related to Ascon, and the team will be logging all comments for use with future outreach efforts. And just a few ground rules, please. Keep it professional and keep it kind. So Andrew, welcome.
Thanks.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
Okay, my name is Andrew Cherene. Like you mentioned, I'm a geologist. I'm a professional geologist licensed in California. I work for HDR. HDR is an engineering and architecture firm nationwide, and I specifically work here in Southern California supporting a number of our projects, some large, some small, for clients from City of San Luis Obispo down to the, I would say, San Diego associated governments. All the way out to Riverside and San Bernardino counties as well. I have about 14 years now in the industry as an environmental consultant. So I've been specializing in contaminated site cleanups, assessments, remediation, hazardous waste removal and disposal. I've worked for some city governments and some industrial clients as well. For this project, I'm here to help the city and the citizens and try to help answer questions to see if we can get a better understanding of a lot of the technical data that has been collected, for the Ascon landfill site.
All right, Andrew, thank you. And by the way, quals sound very relevant.
Okay, I'm glad.
So, Andrew's role as the technical advisor. The city hired Andrew and his company to be an unbiased and independent third-party technical advisor to provide the city and the community with technical support so that all of us can better understand the super complicated science, regulation, environmental policies, and related issues associated with the cleanup work at Ascon. So Andrew has spent the last few months getting up to speed and reviewing the massive amounts of documents related to the project. Andrew's got one heck of a history lesson now. So now enough from me. We're here for Andrew. So Andrew, are you ready for questions from the community?
Let's go for it. What
All right. The first question we have from the community is, what precautions are being made to protect the residents on the west side, basically the waterfront RV, as well as the Huntington by the sea off of Newland and PCH from the dust and odor which affects us? And secondarily, why is there not fencing to protect them in that direction?
Okay. So a couple of parts to the question. So the first part, dust and odor from the Ascon landfill site. Primarily, one of the health risks to the community is going to be a result of the odors, the vapors, the dust, the things that are airborne and can blow from the site off. So those are going to move with the wind in the downwind direction. And according to the human health risk assessment done for the site, about 90% of the time the wind blows to the north and the east, off the ocean and towards inland. So the folks who are going to be most at risk from airborne material are going to be those downwind, north and east. That's in the direction of Edison High School, for example. The other direction is south and west, towards the AES power facility and towards the mobile home park that you mentioned. So those folks are going to experience occasional changes in wind direction that will affect them, but it's going to be far less frequent than the 90% of the time the wind blows the other way. So primarily there's that. Second, in the downwind direction, the site itself has an air monitoring program, an air quality monitoring program where they collect samples, they monitor for dust, they monitor for organic compounds in the air. To date, all of that data has been showing that the risks associated with airborne material is within an acceptable level and protective of human health. So that's great for the downwind folks as well as upwind. As for the fence, there is a 16-foot fence, like you mentioned. It's on the north side and the east side of the site. Those are the downwind directions. They haven't constructed them completely surrounding the site. I can't speak to that other than say that the other directions are downwind. So the risks are reduced in those directions.
All right, Andrew, thanks.
Yeah.
All right, let's get on to question number 2. Inquiring minds want to know, how many tons or what % of the hazardous materials have already been hauled away from the site?
Okay. So there have been a couple of remedial actions that have been done at the site to date. In 2005, what they called the emergency action. It was a result of a real heavy rainy season that year. There was some real concerns about the stability of the berms that contain the waste on site, and they needed to reinforce those. So they removed a lot of waste material from the site at that time. And then again in 2010 and 2011, the interim removal action removed a lot of tarry waste from the site so that they could access parts of the site that were previously inaccessible because the tarry waste was so squishy. They needed to more fully characterize the site. So in order to get to certain locations to collect samples, they had to remove some of that waste material. So all told, about 117,000 cubic yards of waste have been removed to date. It's about 160,000 tons, and that represents about 12% of the estimated 1 million cubic yards at the site.
All right, thanks for that. Sure. Question number 3. So how much of the toxic material is going to be cleaned up from the Ascon site? Is it like 25%, 50%, 75%?
Okay, short answer, 15%. Much longer answer with context is very important. Additional 3% of the waste, about 32,000 cubic yards, is expected to be removed. The details are available in the final remedial action plan that's available online. But there's a lot of details in there. So that's, again, another 3%, bringing the total up to 15% in addition to the 12 already removed. That means 85% is going to remain on site. So it's important to note that removing material and hauling it off-site for off-site disposal at a hazardous waste facility, for example, is one of many remediation alternatives when cleaning up a contaminated site like this. It's generally effective, but it tends to be very brute force, inelegant, messy. Excavating something out of the ground, throwing it on a truck, and driving it down the highway it's not the most,
it creates more exposure.
Exactly. There's always a risk for more exposure, and it can be a little messy. So honestly, they did consider a 100% removal option. They did a feasibility study that considered several alternatives, and one of the alternatives considered was 100% removal of all waste on site. And actually, the risk posed by that method would have been at an unacceptable level relative to leaving 85% on site. Now, with that in mind, the 85% is not just going to sit there forever. Their plan is to mix it with cementing material, cement admixtures, lime kiln dust. They're going to mix that in. It's going to solidify and encapsulate the waste material so that it becomes immobile and stable. Then they are also going to be capping that with clean soil. They're going to import uncontaminated material and put that as a cap layer on top. They're going to include several engineered barriers, layers of geotextile. Those are going to prevent rainwater from infiltrating and potentially moving material around through the water. It's going to prevent vapor from coming up through the soil. They're also going to implement a program of ongoing maintenance, ongoing monitoring in the future. And then the DTSC will impose activity use limitations on the site. So, for example, You don't want 20 years from now somebody coming along and building a hospital or a daycare center on a contaminated landfill.
Makes sense.
So the future uses of the property will also be protective of that that final condition that they're going to put into place.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew.
Mm-hmm.
All right, on to question number 4. Are there backup generators for the protective tents, and to what degree of filtration do the tents provide, and are they adequate in light of the types, mixes, and unknowns of the chemicals that are in the pits that will be excavated?
Okay, so currently on site, there is a large white tent structure. It's a metal building. It's over pit F. It's designed to be airtight. It's designed to be a negative pressure enclosure. Mm-hmm. It has attached to it a vapor treatment train where it'll actually suck air out of the building and treat that exhaust to remove organic compounds that are in the vapor. So the building itself also has an airlock for access when a truck drives in and out. They'll close one door before opening the other. And so during their planned remediation work, they'll operate in a negative pressure environment so that vapors can't escape in an uncontrolled way. They'll go out through the venting system and get treated before it gets exhausted to the atmosphere. So that vapor treatment system is designed to reduce concentrations of contaminants by a factor of 95%. That'll bring those concentrations down below their health risk goals. The permit to operate that tent and system has not yet been approved. The Air Quality Management District currently has an application from the project. The permit application is under review. It hasn't been approved to date. Presumably it will be approved, or at least amended before being approved, and they will be able to operate it. The application itself has a lot of, like you mentioned, to what degree is it going to be reducing the contaminants? Well, they have designed it to reduce by 95%, and one of the conditions, of course, is that excavation will not be allowed to occur unless the whole system is operating as designed. So the idea being that if a backup generator seems like a great idea. It wasn't included in the permit application I saw, but that may be a good question to follow up with. However, if they were to lose power, work would stop, and the building itself would still remain enclosed. It wouldn't fail and release vapor in an uncontrolled way. So there is that, but I think maybe some follow-up on backup generator might be a good idea.
All right, so it sounds like we have a little homework to do on this question. So whoever submitted this question, we thank you. We'll look into what is the backup power source? What is the fail-safe mechanism if power were to go down? So again, a little homework. Okay, we'll follow up on that. The last question we have today, Andrew, is specifically, what is the emergency response plan and community alert system for the schools in the community in the event of an emergency during remediation, other than calling just their 1-800 number that they have on the website?
Okay, to my knowledge, or at least it's my understanding, that a community emergency response plan is not in place at this time. The site, of course, does have their own health and safety plan for operations on site. The staff there is trained. However, if there was a release, for example, how would they alert the community? I believe, actually, no, it is one of the orders from the DTSC. When they issued the order to stop work last summer, one of the conditions to restart work is to put into place a rapid response and follow-up to any complaints. So if someone was to have an issue, they would be able to, like you mentioned, call, they would get a response, and they would have to be addressed in a timely manner. At this time, there's the number for Ascon, the Ascon project themselves, to answer questions. Both the DTSC and AQMD also have their own hotlines for registering comments and complaints. But in the event of an emergency, a real emergency, I would still recommend calling 911, and I'm sure that the city would respond.
We would. So for the community, sounds like there's a plan to have a plan before they resume work, but also 911, the city of Huntington Beach is there for the entire community. All of our forces, from our PD to our fire, we are in complete response if anything were to happen. So I don't want to call us a fail-safe or a backup, because we will be there for you. But again, 911 is a great way to make sure that our community is safe, and we will respond accordingly and call everybody that we can to make sure that our response is full. So with that, that's our 5 questions, Andrew. I want to thank Andrew for all of his knowledgeable insight. I did want to point out that Ascon has revamped their website and has a lot of up-to-date information. The website is asconhb.com, so check it out. Some of the information about the tenting we were talking about today before they resume work is on that website. They just posted it, I think, last week. And they're working really hard to keep that information current as possible. So I hope everyone out there found this useful. I do see a lot of comments. And I want to thank everybody for joining us here tonight. And I want to thank the community group. And we'll be looking at all the comments and filtering those. And we will be looking for outreach in the future. So with that, Andrew, have a great night. Thank you very, very much. And everybody, have a great evening and have a great weekend.